Has North Korea become a full-fledged nuclear power? It may have crossed a key threshold, something the world has been fearing for years. The North has successfully developed mini nuclear warheads that can fit inside missiles capable of reaching the United States. Today, President Trump delivered one of the toughest responses we've heard so far.
North Korea best not make any more threats to the United States. They will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen. He has been very threatening beyond a normal statement. And as I said, they will be met with fire, fury, and frankly power, the likes of which this world has never seen before.
A short while after that, North Korea issued a new threat. It's examining plans to attack the U.S. Pacific territory of Guam. So what are America's options for dealing with the menace?
There is always a military option. That's why you pay $600 billion a year to have a military option. It is an ugly, ugly option, but you cannot play elements of power and then discount that there is no military option.
For more insight, let's bring in General Jack Keane, former Army Vice Chief of Staff and Fox News military analyst. Sir, the North Koreans want the nuclear weapon so that they can preserve its regime. But if they use nuclear weapons, it would be the end of its regime. So where are we tonight?
Yeah, well, their calculation actually is much more than that. Kim Jong-un has departed from his grandfather and his father, who wanted nuclear weapons, as you suggested, to preserve the regime. But Kim Jong-un has come to a different calculation, and therefore his strategy is different. He believes that the only way to preserve the regime, and there's only one country that would change the regime out, that's the United States. And he believes the only way to stop the United States from doing that, and he's paranoid about the United States, is that you have to hold the American people at risk. And that is why we have this accelerated program of ballistic missile development and intercontinental ballistic missiles that have the capability to deliver a nuclear warhead. And furthermore, he strategizes this way, that once he achieves that capability, in his mind, the United States will acquiesce and accept that capability, much as the United States accepted the development of nuclear weapons 10 years ago, and much as the United States 40 years ago accepted China developing intercontinental ballistic missiles over our protestations after they had developed atomic bombs. That's where they're coming from, and they believe they need that capability to checkmate the United States in terms of our military adventurism. And number two, they believe eventually we're going to accept the capability.
All right, General, we're going to take it around the table here, so we'll start with Kimberly.
All right, General Keane, thanks for being on the 5 with us tonight. So obviously, late-breaking details, President Trump taking a very strong stance, letting North Korea know that he will not stand for this kind of behavior. What do you think the strategy for the United States should be going forward? And if I could get your comment on the latest development regarding Guam.
Yeah, well, let's just deal with both of those issues. First of all, I'd like to give the president a do-over on that statement. You know, clearly what he's talking about is the military option, and the president and his team deserve credit since the inauguration of putting the military option back on the table in a credible way that the Obama administration never had it on the table. Nobody in the region believed that President Obama had that military option on the table, even though he talked about it early on in his administration. I think when the president is going to talk about the potential response of the United States, I believe the words that he used should be measured and very clear what he's talking about. This leads to misinterpretation what he said, because implied in his statement is that based on their threats, and that could be verbal threats, we would go to nuclear war. And we know we're not going to do that. Therefore, the statement is incredible. But what is credible is that the military option's back on the table. North Korea's response to that about hitting Guam with missiles is saber-rattling. They are not going to do that, because that would absolutely destroy North Korea as a country, as an entity, and the Chinese would not let that happen either. And it's unfortunate this rhetoric is going back. I think we should stay out of the rhetoric business with North Korea and stay measured in terms of what our response is.
All right, we'll go to Greg Gutfeld next.
Hey, General, I don't know. This is the first time I've ever seen a Western leader respond to North Korea using their actual language. And I'm wondering if this is just another way of President Trump negotiating on, negotiating from a very powerful point of view, one that they understand, using words like that are easily translatable, like fire and fury. But I want to go back to what Dana said in the beginning, that if they strike first, it's completely over for them. So if we do nothing, theoretically, nothing happens. Am I right?
That's certainly the equation that people want to believe. The problem we have is because of the kind of regime that North Korea has, we cannot treat North Korea the way we treat other great power competitions, namely the Soviet Union in the past and now Russia, and also China, who possess significant amount of nuclearized ICBMs. Because of the erratic nature of the North Korean regime, we don't believe, and I don't know anybody that does except people on the far left, that you can use mutually assured destruction as the deterrence for North Korea ever using those weapons against the United States. We don't believe that. So what we want to happen is that they don't get the capability, and that's the path we're heading on. And the path to them not having this capability, nuclearized ICBMs, there's only really one path, and that's China, and we're on that path, but we're not close to getting where we need to be. We're on a collision course with China. You're going to see us get really tough with China, because I don't think China will behave necessarily in the way that Ambassador Haley wants them to behave. I think that they're going to come up short, and we're going to have to really go after China and their interest with Korea, but also their interest in the region. We're going to have to put significant geopolitical and economic pressure on China.
All right, Jesse Waters.
So, General, it seems like there's a few options here. The United States either accepts a nuclearized North Korea, and it's almost like the Soviet Union, where you just kind of live under that blackmail scenario. Or our offensive capabilities will just take them out. You have the B-52s, you have the ground-based ICBMs, you have the ones in the subs, too, and that just obliterate them, and then you have a huge crisis on your hands. Or, third option, a coup or an assassination attempt. What do you think the chances are of a targeted assassination attempt, a decapitation strategy in North Korea?
You know, well, there is a possibility of that happening, and that would be something that was engineered by the Chinese, because they want to change out the leadership, and thinking that the leadership is not responding to them. But listen, this is what we've got to recognize. North Korea has nuclear weapons because the Chinese wanted them to have nuclear weapons. They wanted them to be the dominant power on the peninsula. North Korea has intercontinental ballistic missiles that look remarkably similar to the Chinese intercontinental ballistic missiles that are portable missiles. I bet anything, if we went up and pulled off the label, we'd see made in China during those parades. So that, you have to understand how close these countries are. The intellectual property they're using is Chinese. Some of the major parts they're using is Chinese. So China has their hands all over this thing. The path through this has got to be through China. And there is a possibility, because of the pressure that China will start to put on North Korea, and if they get resistance, that would lead them to make the regime change. In other words, assassinate them and put somebody else in his place that's complicit with them and would respond to their guidance. That is still a reasonable option that could be down the road.
All right, Richard Fowler.
Thanks. General, thanks for being on the 5 tonight. So talking about those delivery systems, what options do we have, what does our military have to actually destroying those delivery systems tactically? Can we send our Air Force in to actually destroy the delivery systems so they can't use the warheads?
Yeah. Well, the best way to deal with the delivery system is to destroy it before it lifts the missile off the launch pad. That way you guarantee the destruction of that capability. What Kim Jong-un is no fool, and what he has said to us, if anybody conducts an unprovoked attack on any of my military capabilities, that is war on the peninsula, and I will conduct an immediate invasion of South Korea with every rocket and missile I have, and also nuclear weapons. That is the threat that he's holding over us to prevent us from exercising that kind of a military action. That's offensive in nature. The rest of our military actions dealing with a delivered system are defensive, and that is to shoot the system down at sea or to shoot it when it's up in space using the ground-based mid-course missiles, 44 of them that are in Alaska and also in California. That is not an option that we want to have to use, because that's a system that's heading towards some population center in the United States, and we're totally dependent on a bullet killing a bullet in thin air. We have capability to do it, but we also have missed 50 or 60% of the time with the system that I'm describing to you right now.
General, I was going to let you go, but let me ask you one last question. There are moms and dads that are trying to explain this to their kids tonight. There are kids that did not grow up in the Cold War, as a lot of us here at the table did, minus a couple here. That, you know, we were sort of used to this idea, this thought. This is new to them, and the anxiety level is really high. There was a CBS poll tonight that said that 72% of Americans are absolutely concerned about this and actually starting to get scared. What would you advise them tonight in terms of talking to their kids or just trying to calm the situation down with that anxiety level going up?
Here's some things we should take solace with. President Trump, although he's inexperienced in foreign policy and national security, has got great instincts about it, and he's got an intuitive sense about it. I know that from personal conversations. Secondly, he's got one of the best national security teams wrapped around him that this country has ever had. These are steady, calm, measured people that have been in and out of crisis all their adult lives. This is good news for us. I believe that we will avoid war with North Korea, because we are going to take the action necessary with China to force them into a position that will create change. It's the only option that makes any sense, and once China understands that, then we're going to make some progress, real progress with them.
Okay.
If somebody, I was watching on a previous show on Fox today, by the way, Fox has got this story absolutely 100% correct.
Thank you.
By comparison to the other channels. And they asked one of our senior guys, what's the percentage of going to war? 60 or 70%. I don't buy that at all. I think we're going to avoid war. It's not that we shouldn't be concerned. Come on, this is a crisis. This is dangerous. But we've got steady people here who know what they're doing.
All right. Glad I asked the question.